R-A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Good Old Fashioned Dislike podcast, where dynasties never die and hate is an extreme word, but just barely. This episode is brought to you by Collision Auto Repair Services in Killen, Alabama. Football is a collision sport, but driving your car shouldn't be. When your car suffers from unnecessary roughness, be sure to call Collision Auto Repair Services at 256-272-2007. That's 256-272-2007. And we are live on Facebook and YouTube, gathering in your takes on the retirement of Nick Saban. How's it going, Stacy? Martin, how you doing this evening? I'll just be honest with you, as a Alabama fan, still a little bit in shock. Just to be completely honest, there was some gut reaction thought earlier, some different things going on, that made me kind of think that this might be something on the horizon. And, I don't care which team you're a fan of, feel free to share. I'll throw them up on the screen, your favorite Nick Saban moment and maybe how you're feeling tonight. We want to stay positive, right? We want to celebrate the career of the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Nick Saban, in his wonderful coaching career and some of the greatest moments, whether that as a rival fan, seeing him lose, or if it's a personal story, or, your favorite moment of when the man won. And he won plenty of football games. My life will never be the same. It's pretty awesome. I got to take my kids to their first Alabama football game this fall, and so they will forever be able to say that they witnessed a game coached by Nick Saban. That's a phenomenal thing that they'll get to say for the rest of their life, which is something that many people from here on out won't be able to say. So, that's just incredible in itself. Nobody's ever going to be as successful as him. Me too, Stacy. I thought, you don't know what you got till it's gone. That's just kind of how that rolls and how it works. And, it's unfortunate. All good things must come to an end, but they happened. And, to be on top of the college football world as long as it can. And I think they'll do a great job. They'll go out and get the right guy to take over. But, Stacey, what was your favorite Nick Saban moment? What was the thing that, I know that's hard to do. It's a little easier to do, top 5 or something like that. Something that's really cool. Those of you that live in Alabama, Nick Saban and maybe Terry from time to time had the commercials about being foster parents. And that was heavily influenced us in our decision to be foster parents. The fact that there was something near and dear to his heart made it something near to us. It wasn't the final say, but it certainly helped nudge us in that direction. Just thinking about the iconic losses, he had less losses than he had first round NFL picks. That's just insane. People just don't do that. It's not going to happen again. And, we need to be prepared for that. And I think that's why there's a lot of celebrating around the country tonight, especially in our rival campuses, because they know, regardless of who we get, whether we get the guy in Athens or we get the guy in Eugene or wherever, chances are they're not going to be nearly at the level that Nick was, so that's what they're celebrating. And we understand that. I get it. But man, just great moments. A guy who influences the world for good. Stacy agrees. Commercials about foster parents was a big influence of Jonathan and her doing foster care. Uh, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, there's a couple of lives impacted forever by Nick Saban. And we, of course, know that many, many, many multiples of people have been influenced and blessed to know and influenced by Nick Saban. So, what do you think? I think, man, 6 national championships, big deal. I think second and 26 is one of those moments that will live on forever. Is one of the greatest college football plays. I mean, it's going to be hard to argue with that. I mean, walk off, overtime, national championship to defeat Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta. I mean, that's just a big, big deal. So, you got any favorite Nick Saban moments? Even if you're a rival fan, feel free to tap in and let us know. I think about, it's way back machine. I think about AJ McCarron not taking enough time off the clock, snapping the ball too soon to Nick Saban's liking, and Nick Saban swatting him on the rear end when he got to the sideline. That's not something you see much of today. I mean, synonymous with Alabama forever. Of course, the statement that it had to do with age and health. We certainly hope and wish that everyone is okay, that if it is a health issue, it's not a major concern. Certainly be praying about that. But, the impact of college football. I mean, you can make the argument that much of the changes over the last few years have been in an effort to bring more parity, to take the tide kind of off the pedestal. And, it's up to see whether that is the case or not. But I guarantee you some of the NIL, that stuff certainly made life hard. Coaches' time frames now, like, you're not going to get any rest. Jeff Tabener from West Virginia. Great to see a West Virginia guy thrive at Bama. What he did at Bama will be hard to be duplicated. And that's coming from a state who is known for good coaches, right? Whether they were homegrown or coached there or coached somewhere else. Nick and a great fraternity there from West Virginia. And yeah, I mean, that's going to be impossible. And I think what's going to be difficult is for these Alabama fans to wrap their minds around that, no matter who they bring in, it's not going to be the same, right? And staying the same is not always successful. There were coaches who tried to do it Bears way, right? There needs to be change. Wesley Cook asks, prediction on next coach. I will be, I think you have to call the ones who you assume are going to say no, right? You got to make Kirby say no, right? You got to make that call. Unless this is health related, I would assume that the person they wanted was already in hand, or already fairly on the hook. I think it will end up being Dan Lanning from Oregon. That's a big buyout. It's like $20 million. So you got to get over that. Alabama can do that, right? And if he's the first choice, I think they pay it. But I would say Dan Lanning. I would love to have Kirby, right? I respect Georgia and what he's done there. I respect Kirby and what he's done there. Not really a whole lot of ill will there. But I would say Dan Lanning. I'm not a betting man, but that's who I would go with. You're right, Stacy. People don't like change. I don't like change, but sometimes change is good. Jeff asks, does Lanning have ties to Bama? He was a GA, and Nick was going to hire him. And I believe he was the defensive coordinator at Georgia. Kirby hired him as the D coordinator, I think, at Georgia, right as Nick Saban was going to hire him. And then, of course, Oregon hired him from Georgia. So, yeah, he was on Nick Saban's staff. Nick has a lot of quotes of his respect for Dan Lanning. There are rumors. In fact, Wesley, I would say I think I've seen the Eugene, Oregon news confirm that he is in Tuscaloosa. I would say I would think he would be the first option, of course, after Kirby has a firm no, which I think he will. Yeah. So, yeah, I think some other moments that rank up there for me. I mean, you have the thrilling wins. I'm more of the coach, like when you made somebody quit, right? When you made him quit. Pasquale says D'Amico Ryans, man, that would be a great hire. I think the only issue with D'Amico is he's in the playoffs. And so he's not going to be talking about Alabama. And, you got recruits, I think it's been reported that they ask the current players to give it 48 hours, 48 to 72 hours before they make a decision about leaving. I think, man, you need something done. The quicker, the better. Obviously, if you can get Dan Lanning, if you can't get the guy you want, it's going to take a little longer. But that's my only hiccup with D'Amico. I think he'd be great. I mean, I'm all for him. I just don't think the timeline lines up for the Tide. But, man, it's a good place to be to have so many options when it comes to coaches. And, how are you going to turn Bama down? I mean, there's some jobs out there. I mean, Texas can pay you whatever they want. A guy like Dan Lanning, it's going to be tough to turn it down, but you got Nike. Nike can do it for you as well. But yeah, I just think, as a guy who missed the Bear Bryant era, I was alive for 2 years. I think he passed away in 83. We got a natty in 92. Shula came in, gave us a 10-win season. But as a guy who's experienced, maybe in the not great years of Alabama, and then to get this 17-year run is insane, right? I had the pleasure of meeting Coach Saban at Heritage Christian University's fundraiser. I met him a couple of times at a coaching clinic, and the guy loved to coach. He loved being on the practice field. He was like a kid, chasing guys down, chewing on them a bit, pushing them, and he just loved practice. I think he loved recruiting in the old days, the old ways of recruiting. I think maybe some of that has to do with, it's a 24/7 job. We used to think it was 24/7, but now you're recruiting. You got to recruit to keep the players that aren't playing. Sometimes you got to recruit the players that are. I knew this day would come. But you're never ready for it. And certainly my walls are littered with Nick Saban moments, that I'll cherish forever. And that's really what the sad part about how fast things move is. You just don't get an opportunity to really pump the brakes and go, man, look at greatness and how awesome it was. And, it'll pick right back up. We've already got recruits decommitting and that's just part of it now, unfortunately. But there'll be plenty of outpourings and dedications, and I just want to take that minute, take a moment to celebrate the man known as Coach Nick Saban. Hated by many, but as he mentioned, mediocre people do not like high achievers, and high achievers don't like mediocre people. And, people who can pump the brakes and go, yeah, I wanted to beat him more than anybody else in the world. And when we did, we rushed the field and we celebrated like it was crazy. Just speaks to his legendary nature. Most of his losses are name games, right? I mean, when you have more first-round draft picks in the NFL than losses, then you've done some good. I heard a stat. I don't know the specific numbers, but he won more games in his tenure in 17 years than Alabama won from the end of the Bear Bryant era to the start of the Nick Saban era, right? And so, man, that's just crazy stat to think about, the 10-win seasons. repeatedly since the loss in the Rose Bowl, I've told people in text, may 12-2 always be, may 12-2 and defeating all of our rivals and winning the SEC always be a down year. And we'll see with the next hire, but just want to take a few minutes, jump on and encourage everybody to just think about Nick Saban and your favorite moment of the Nick Saban era. I think as far as other people during the Nick Saban era, I just remember the Brian Kelly interview at halftime of the Notre Dame national championship. And basically the most honest interview I've ever seen, when they ask him, hey, what do you got to do at halftime to get back in the game with Alabama? And it was basically like, we got to get faster and stronger, which are all answers of you can't do that at halftime. That's an off-season problem. And man, that was just some high quality Alabama stuff there. LSU not crossing the 50. You're never going to see that again in the era of high powered offenses. I mean, I won't get into the Iron Bowl too much because it's still fresh, but I mean, that's just the never quit. You knew when you were going to play the Tide, you were going to get a team that did not quit, that you could get up by 10, you could get up by 14. But they're going to keep coming, and you may still win by 10 or 14, and it may just be your day, and you may just be that much better than them, but you are going to play through it, and you're going to have a whole day to wrestle with it. Jeff Tabner, you'll be curious to see who he does his first interview with. He's been on Pat McAfee's show every Thursday. Yeah, it's interesting, Jeff. They've made it out to be that this was not an immediate decision, that this was something that was coming, but it makes it difficult to believe that because, nobody can keep a secret now. Right. And so, once again, we're all hoping and praying that it's not something health related, outside of what comes with how old he is. And that it's not something major. So we'll see. I don't know. You think if he's made a contract to be on there every Thursday, tomorrow's Thursday, I'm sure it'll be much watched TV. But yeah, most importantly, we just hope everything's okay. Raymond Hunt jumps on and says the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl. Well, to that point, Raymond, my golden dislike this week originally was the Ravens not putting the Steelers out of the playoffs when they could have. And that usually comes back to bite the Ravens. Number one AFC seed and 0-2 versus the Steelers. And you actually let them stay in the playoffs. Ridiculous. But anyways, I didn't want to be on all night. Just wanted to jump on and give people an opportunity to share their favorite Nick Saban moments. Eric Cheney says double dislike. Coach Saban didn't even ask me. My favorite moment was when he talked to the Coke bottle. Oh yeah, Eric, man, the interviews, the post practice, press conferences, man, top notch. Yeah, the Coke, I remember that. And then I think it was SEC Shorts or somebody did a parody of the Coke talking back. My wonderful co-host Ben Hayes, just thankful to have enjoyed the Nick Saban era. Yeah, you're right, Ben. We both endured a lot of rough Bama times prior to Saban, and we have been spoiled, but loved it. I mean, the man lost to Tennessee once. So, that's my favorite aspect of the Nick Saban era. So roll Tide, Ben. Roll Tide indeed. We'll take a few more minutes. Any of your favorite moments? Once again, if you're a rival fan, you like beating him, feel free to comment. Let us know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. I'm sure they rolled tumors tonight, and understandably so. And the questions will be, where were you when you found out Nick Saban retired? So the second and 26, I mentioned that I was watching that national championship game. And when Alabama lined up for the field goal, the Alabama quarterback or running back at the time was talking to the kicker. And I just remember thinking, you don't ever talk to the kicker. Don't talk to the kicker. Don't talk to the kicker. Of course, he trots out there. He shanks it. And at that moment, I turned the TV off, and I'm like, I'm never going to watch Alabama kick a field goal again. And so I'm on Twitter, and I'm refreshing like crazy. And, the sack, Tua loses so many yards, the sack. And then all of a sudden it refreshes. Alabama wins, national champions. And I ran outside in the yard, and I ran a lap or two around my front yard yelling, "Roll Tide, roll Tide, roll Tide." And then I came back in the house and dogpiled on top of my wife, who was asleep. And of course, she had no idea what was going on. But those are the moments, right, that Nick Saban has given us. And so, like I said earlier, Nick Saban influenced my wife and I to become foster parents, and eventually adopt our two. And I just appreciate it. Thank you, Nick Saban. Thank you, Terry Saban, for some tremendous memories. Pasquale closes us out with, "Will always love my Tide. Dynasty is not over." This is the podcast where dynasties never die. And we certainly hope Alabama's continues. We pray that you all have a good night. As Ben says, Alabama onside kick against Clemson was pretty classic, man. There are just tons and tons of memories. That's from the game that you see right beside me with Kenyon Drake taking it to the house. Everybody have a wonderful night. We'll talk at you soon.